It is the moment you've all been waiting for. Actually, I don't know if anyone's been waiting for this. This is gonna be every single book I read in January, February, and March. I haven't done a reading wrap up since the start of the new year because I moved, I've been traveling, and I just haven't been reading a lot. So I was like, okay, once I have like a substantial amount of books to talk about, I'll do a wrap up. So now I have like maybe 20 books, maybe a little less than 20 books to talk about in today's video. So this is like 3-month reading wrap up all in one. I've actually read so many books that I have not liked so far this year, which has been really sad because I feel like it's rare that I don't like a book, but for some reason I'm just hitting book after book after book that I don't love. It's not that I hate them, it's just I don't love it, and it's like a spectrum. It's either like every book I've read has been like 5 stars or it's like 1. So this is gonna be an interesting wrap up. So without further ado, let's get into every single book I've read so far in 2022. So the first book I finished in January, I think I finished it on New Year's Day, was I Temporarily Do by Ellie Cahill. I barely remember this book. It was super short. Sorry, I have the worst memory, and I don't have my book journal that I have these books journaled in, so I like have to go completely off memory. But this book was friends to lovers. The boy just went through a breakup, and it turned out him and his friend, the girl, the love interest, were going to the same university. He was supposed to live with his ex, but then they broke up, so now he has nowhere to live, and she also can't afford a place to live. So they decide that they're going to get married so that they can live in the family housing on campus. And then they go on like this whole road trip together. Pretty sure there's a sharing a bed scene. It was a super quick book, so I didn't really get attached to it, and it was not memorable to me, but it was like fun in the moment. I remember like it was like fine in the moment. Like I wasn't like, ugh, this is horrible, but nothing that stuck out to me. After I read that, I read Verity by Colleen Hoover. Loved it, did a reading vlog. I really enjoyed it. I'd probably give it 4 stars. It was creepy and scary. I ate that shit up. Like I could not stop reading it. And the ending was like crazy. That was a good book. I really liked that one. Then after that, I read Long Shot by Kennedy Ryan. This is the first book in a series. I haven't read the rest of the series yet, but this book was heavy. Okay, if you think that trigger warnings are a spoiler, then maybe skip ahead a little bit, but I'm gonna give you the trigger warning because I think they're really important, because I did not know, like going into this book, how graphic it was going to be. So there's trigger warning, sexual assault, and domestic violence, like very graphic and detailed. So if you don't want to read that, don't read this book. It was very emotional and I enjoyed it a lot, and I liked the romance, but I was not expecting that. I thought it was gonna be a little sports romance. I really liked the book, but it's very heavy, and don't go into it thinking it's gonna be a cute sports romance like I did, because it's not. But I really liked it, and I will read the rest of the series eventually, so I'm excited to read that because I did like this one. This is one of the ones I did like. Just keep in mind that it is not lighthearted. Then after that, I read Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. This was her new release. So good. Gave it 5 stars. It's so hard to even tell you what this book about without spoiling it. Basically, Hedda goes back to her hometown. No one knows she's back in town, and everyone's kind of shunned her, and she's just desperately trying to connect with her daughter after this horrible incident that happened. Oh, just like every Colleen Hoover book, just hits you in the heart. You feel so bad for the characters. I really recommend it. It was really good. Then after that, I read Bad Habit by Charlie Rose. I read this because it is my friend Ellie's favorite book of all time. Finally decided to read it. I did really enjoy it. This girl and her brother have to move back to live with their dad after all this shit happens with their mom. So they have like a rough upbringing, and she's kind of raised her younger brother, and they're super close, and now they live with their dad, who they barely know. She ends up meeting this guy named Dare who owns a tattoo shop, and he just like so grumpy and like mean. She's working at the place right next door to his tattoo shop, but he is always intrigued by her and she's always intrigued by him. They have really good chemistry. She ends up working for him, and it's forced proximity, and she has some incidences with her ex-boyfriend. There's like jealousy and protectiveness trope, and yeah, I really liked this book. So far I've been all the ones I like. Now we're gonna start getting into where it started going downhill a little bit for me. So then I read Dare You to Hate Me by B. Celeste. I'd never heard anyone talk about this, but I saw that it was good boy, bad girl, which is a trope I normally really like. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna read it. And then it wasn't really even that trope. It's childhood best friends to enemies to lovers, which is a great trope. And it could have been so good, but it just didn't do it for me. Basically, Ivy and Aiden were best friends growing up, and then something happened with her family that made her want to run away. And she asked Aiden to run away with her, and they were like just starting out to like be a little bit more than friends at this time in high school. And he didn't go with her, and she ran away. And then they lost all contact, and they were inseparable growing up. Both of them have like went their separate ways, but then they end up at the same university. Ivy's kind of been through a lot in the past few years that have made her like very different. Aiden is like the star quarterback, so he's like popular and like a jock, and like everyone likes him. I don't know, I just didn't really love the relationship, like the way that their relationship developed. I didn't love this book. Probably give it like a 3 star, maybe less. I just didn't really love the characters, so I didn't love the book. Then I read The Worst Best Man by Mia Sosa. I liked this one. So basically the main character, Carolina, was left at the altar when she was getting married a few years ago. And then there's a time jump and now she's a wedding planner. She's really good at her job. She gets this opportunity to work for like this really high profile company, I think, or like a hotel chain, something where she could like really promote her business with it. When she gets there, she realized she's partnered up with her ex that left her at the altar and his brother. She gets paired to do a project for like the interview process with the brother, so the best man. They start having to work together and like you can feel that they have like really good chemistry like right off the bat, but obviously that's forbidden. And she also is mad at him because she thinks that he's the one that convinced her ex to break up with her and like leave her at the altar, so she like hates him. But obviously they're forced to spend all this time together, working together, kind of behind the brother's back. But the brother's a dickhead, so it doesn't really matter. I really liked the development of their relationship. I thought it was really cute and I enjoyed this book. Probably give it like a 4 stars, to be honest. I would recommend it. Then after that I read Get a Life, Chloe Brown, and you're probably like, you already read that book, you already talked about it. I talked about this book in a video when I was like, oh, I'm halfway through, and I was like, I'm gonna read the rest of the series, I promise. It was in my slump video. I didn't read the rest of the series. I didn't even finish reading the book. I felt myself falling back into a slump, so I stopped reading it and picked up another book, which is so annoying because everyone really loved this book. I read it again and I finished it this year and I liked it, but it just wasn't doing it for me. Like, I just thought it was kind of like cheesy. I don't know. I felt like it was kind of adult characters that acted a little bit immature. I don't know what it was that it wasn't doing it for me. A lot of people told me to read the rest of the series because they said I'd really like it, so I'm gonna probably give it a chance later, like the rest of the books. But yeah, I'd give this one like 3.5 stars. It was like not bad, but not great for me. Maybe that's just because I was like in a slump, so I wasn't like feeling it really. But when I came back and reread it, it didn't evoke anything in me. I know a lot of people love it, so it's probably just my opinion. And then after this, I read Terms and Conditions, which was my most anticipated book release that came out. It's by Lauren Asher, the second book in the Dreamland Billionaire series. If you know, The Fine Print is one of my 5-star reads. I loved it so much, and I love Terms and Conditions just as much. I also gave it 5 stars and I loved it. Oh my god, you have to read this series, guys. Like, Lauren Asher is an incredible writer, in my opinion. For anyone's like, no, she's not. In my opinion. So basically, Iris is Declan's personal assistant. Workplace forced proximity trope, right? She's his assistant and he is really rich. He basically owns like the Disneyland of this fictional world, right? So rich and so mean. She's literally like his right-hand man. She does everything for him. Like, he would not survive without her, but he's like not very grateful for everything she does. In order to get like his inheritance that his grandpa left for him, he has to get married. He just does not have any interest in any women. He doesn't date anyone. And Iris finally finds someone to marry him. It ends up all falling apart. And then Iris is like, how can I fix this? Because like all she cares about is like doing her job. And she's like, fuck it, I'll marry him. And he's like, no, don't do that. And she's like, I'll do it. I promise it'll be fine. Like, we'll figure it out. It's only for a few years that we have to be together. She was like so easygoing about marrying him, which was like, at first I was like, this is very unrealistic. At the beginning I was kind of skeptical if I was gonna like it, and then as the book went on I really did enjoy it. And then you see him open up and soften, and it's so good and so cute, and I loved their dynamic, the slow build up. Lauren Asher just has my heart. Her writing does it for me every single time. All hits, no misses. Okay, then I read the book Enemies by Tihan Tai. I don't know how to say that. But this book has been recommended to me a lot, or this author has been recommended to me a lot, and I finally picked up a book by them. It was okay. It didn't like blow me away. It was very similar to Dare You to Hate Me. Like, I keep getting them mixed up in my head. Like, I literally can't remember which one was which. What I do remember is I hated the characters' names in this book. The girl's name is Dusty and the boy's name is Stone. Dusty and Stone. I couldn't look past it. As I was reading it, I was like, what the fuck are these names? This was also childhood friends to enemies to lovers, which is why I get confused. And he's also like a star football player, and she also had like a rough time while they were apart, right? So like, you can see how these stories are like exactly the same, and I was getting them confused, but I did like this one more. Basically, Dusty goes to college and she moves into this house with all these like kind of mean girls, and it's like a big party house. Her childhood best friend, Stone, is on the, not the college team, but the NFL team of that city. So like everyone knows him, but he's like big time, right? She's like, oh, I hate him. You don't know why she hates him, but in her dialogue, she's just like, I hate that guy. Like, I hate that everyone idolizes him. Like, he's the worst. I don't like him. I don't like his family, whatever. One day, Stone shows up at her house and is like, I need to talk to you. This is serious. And she's like, I hate you. What? And he's like, I just found out something about your family and I want to be the one to tell you, and I want to comfort you, whatever. And from that point on, They're kind of there for each other. They kind of figure out like what happened when they were younger that made them hate each other. And then Dusty's trying to like recover from this whole thing she just found out about her family. That's how their relationship kind of starts, is like from this trauma. I liked this one enough, but it wasn't anything crazy to me. So then I read another 5-star read for me, which was Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. I loved this book. Nothing like I've ever read before. It's actually a memoir, so kind of like an autobiography. I've never even read anything like it, but I am obsessed. I've bought so many memoirs since reading this because I just want to read more and more and more. Like the way it's written, it's basically about Dolly's life. She grew up in London, and it starts from when she's like a kid and it goes until like she's in her 30s, and it basically goes through all the stages of her life, like different stories with her friends, about love, about romance, about sex, about dating, about partying, everything about her life, like, and the most crazy stories and like just comforting stories, and like the quotes from this book. It's been all over my Instagram. If you follow me on Instagram, you know I'm obsessed with this because I posted so many quotes, and it's basically just everything she's learned about life and love throughout her like years of growing up and like, having this crazy like party girl lifestyle, and then growing up and like trying to figure herself out and get a job. And I thought it would be boring when I heard the synopsis. And truthfully, the only reason I picked it up is because I loved the title and the way it was like things are like scribbled out on it. I just loved that, and that's why I picked it up, and then I couldn't put it down. I immediately made Lauren read it, and we both were just obsessed, and I feel like I learned a lot about life from that, and I gave it 5 stars, and I loved it, and I'd reread it, and I'm just like obsessed with this lady's life. Like, I want to know what she's doing now. I loved her writing style. I just really loved that book. And then after that, I read The Mountain Is You by Brianna Wiest. This is a book about self-sabotage. I started reading it at the end of 2021. I read like the first 3 chapters, and then I was like, okay, it's boring. It's like a self-help book, which I've never read before, but I am a famous self-sabotager, and I always have been, and I never understood why. Like, I have to like try to ruin every good thing that happens to me. Oh damn, this just got deep. But I picked up this book one night in February, I think, and I read the whole thing in one sitting, and I was like, I just had like a revelation. So if you're a self-sabotager, I would read this book. It kind of like diagnoses why you are the way that you are. There's a bunch of different reasons for why. It talks a lot about hyper-independence and how that's not actually a good thing, which I felt like that just like struck my soul. So I read that in just like one sitting one night, and it was like a therapy session, and then I was like, okay, that's enough of that. Then right after that, I read The Way I Used to Be by Amber Smith. Huge trigger warning, the entire book is about sexual assault. There's a graphic scene of it, but this story is about this girl who gets sexually assaulted by her brother's best friend at a really young age, and it shows her growing up with that trauma and how it manifests in her entire life, in every relationship she's in, friendship, familial relationship, romantic relationship, sexual relationship, every relationship she has, how that one moment in her life defined everything for her. Oh my god, it was so powerful and so good, and the ending, it makes me want to cry thinking about it. I was reading it in public, and I was literally sitting there like, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. And it was so frustrating, but it's just so like, you just feel for her, and you just know like you can't blame her for anything she's doing because it's not her fault. If you don't think you can handle that topic, don't read it, but I really, really recommend it if you do. Oh, I'm so scared to talk about this. You guys are gonna hate me. Okay, then I read Flock by Kate Stewart. And I know so many people love this series, and I know so many people like got so emotionally attached and it's their favorite thing ever, but I hated it. I hated it. I would give it 0 stars if I could. I just didn't like it. And I read the second book, I read Exodus, and I didn't like it either. So let me explain why. Let me defend myself. So basically the first book, so I was like vibing with it at first. I was like, okay, feeling it out. Then it was really slow in the beginning. And basically it's about this girl who has to go live with her dad and work at his like factory because she's trying to get an inheritance, and she starts meeting the people that work there, and she meets this guy named Sean, and they start a little romantic relationship, and then she meets Sean's friend Dominic, and they start having some chemistry, and I was like, oh my god, this is gonna be a love triangle, like what's going on, whatever. See, I was vibing with it for a little bit, and it started getting so confusing and so cryptic. I felt like everything the characters said made no sense. They were trying to be like deep and like have all these secrets, and like it just felt very like fake deep, and I just did not connect with it at all, and I was just so confused. I felt like nothing was ever fully explained. I felt like the relationship, even like the romantic relationship, was so surface level. Like I didn't feel like any of the characters had any depth to them, which I know you guys are gonna hate me because you guys love these books. Like I get comments about them all the time. And so then I went into it with an open mind going into Exodus because I was like, okay, that book was maybe an introduction, and then Exodus will have a plot. I was completely wrong. Every development we had from the first book was basically irrelevant in the second book, and I was just so confused. I felt like none of my questions got answered ever. I was always confused at what was going on. I never knew what to expect about the romance aspect, and then there's new characters being introduced. I was just trying to kind of rush through the chapters with this new character because I was like, I need to see what happens with like the whole characters that I built up the whole first book reading about. And then I realized that that was actually supposed to be the plot, and I was like, what the fuck is going on? Like, I thought this was just gonna like pass. Like, I didn't like it. I didn't cry at all. Everyone cries. I felt like the characters were so in love with each other, but like I also felt like they didn't even know each other, and like they barely talked, and everything was such a mystery, and like they would go months without seeing each other, and I just didn't like it. Moral of the story, I didn't read Finish Line just because I had no interest in that book, and because I know it's like a different story, so I know I didn't have to read it to like complete the series. I didn't like it at all. Speaking my truth, I'm sorry if you love it. I know a lot of people do, so this is, again, I'm probably in the unpopular opinion here, but I did not like it at all. Me and my friend were talking about it because she's also read it. She's like, I felt the same way. I hated it so much. I'm like, okay, at least I'm not the only one. Anyways, after that, I was like, I cannot let myself get in a slump. Like, after reading like books I didn't like that much, I was like, I need to read something I know I'll love. So I was like, Taylor Jenkins Reid, my girl, my queen. I know I can rely on you with my life. And I read One True Loves, and it was amazing. 5 stars. It is a romance. I know Taylor Jenkins Reid's books are normally like not really a romance, but this one is actually a romance. All in the first chapter, you find out that she fell in love with this kid from high school. They were so in love with each other, and then he dies. And then one day she gets a phone call, and she answers it, and it's him, and he's alive. But when he's alive, she's in a whole nother relationship with a whole nother guy that she's also felt head over heels in love with and can't see her living without. So now she's in love with 2 men, realizing the one from her past came back. It was so good. I didn't know how it was going to turn out, but luckily what I wanted to happen did happen. If you read it, you know you know. But it just shows how you can be so in love with someone and still not be enough, you know? Or you can love someone so much and realize that you're just not compatible. The quotes were so good. I love Taylor Jenkins Reid so much. I want to read every book she's ever written. So yeah, I could not recommend When True Love's enough. I really, really, really liked it. After that, I read Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. See, I liked this book, but I thought it was so corny. I found myself cringing so many times. Like, it's just very, very, very cliche. I think it might be YA, so maybe I'm just like the older side, so it, like I couldn't relate to it that much, but I just thought the way it was written was like really cheesy. Like, I liked the characters and I liked the story, but I thought it was so cringe. I'd probably give it like a 3.75 stars because I could not look past the cringe. It's about this girl Liz whose mom passed away. Her mom passed away like years ago, but it's still very prevalent theme in her life, and she's been obsessed with like rom-coms and like wanting to live in a romance movie since her mom was like obsessed with them, and she thinks that's what her mom would want for her. And she's had a crush on this boy her whole life. His name is Michael, and he finally moves back into town, but he's like popular and doesn't really notice her. So she somehow sparks up an alliance with her next door neighbor Wes, who is like, she's always thought she hated like since she was a kid because he's just kind of like the bad boy. I didn't really think he was a bad boy, but she kept describing him as that. He's gonna help Michael notice her because he's friends with Michael, and so they start like doing all this thing, kind of like making her over, and he would like take her to parties and like they talk, try to get her with Michael, but you could tell the whole time that Wes and Liz were falling for each other while she was trying to get with Michael. It's basically a whole build up to like this prom. I don't know, I thought it was okay, nothing crazy to me. I don't know, I just thought the way it was written was like cheesy, which everyone loves a good cheesy romance here and there. So okay, then this one is so random, but I started reading. The next 2 books I'm in the middle of reading. What We Talk About When We Talk About Love by Raymond Carver. This is a collection of short stories, and I still don't know my opinion on it. I'm like halfway through. The only reason I picked this up is because they talk about it in the movie Stuck in Love, which is one of my favorite movies. I love that movie so much. They mention this quote from this collection of short stories in the movie Stuck in Love, and that quote has stuck with me since I first watched that movie. I've been obsessed with it. I always think about it. Like, it's the quote that's like, I could hear everyone's heart beating. I could hear everyone's heart. I could hear the human noise we sat there making. Not one of us moving, not even when the room went dark, I think. I just loved that quote so much, and it stuck with me for so long that I was like, okay, I'm gonna read the book that it's in. But I haven't even gotten to that quote yet in the book. I think it's the very end. I think it's like the closing line. But this is a collection of short stories of the most mundane human interactions I've ever read about. But for some reason, it's like very gripping to me. Like, it will be a story about this man going to a yard sale, and then it ends. And you're like, what was the point of that? It's like 2 pages long. He walks around a yard sale and he buys a record player and then leaves. And you're like, okay. And then the next story will be like about a couple that's getting divorced, and then it just ends. It's like every story's 2 pages, and it feels like none of them really have a purpose. but for some reason I can't stop reading it. I'll just go back and forth between like the book I'm currently reading, which I'm gonna get into in a second, and this book, and just read like a couple short stories and then go back to my little romance book. I just really want to get to the short story that has that quote in it because I love that quote so much. The book I'm reading right now, that I've been reading the short stories in between, is The Air He Breathes by Brittany C. Cherry. This is the first book in the Element series, which has been on my TBR for like years, and I finally got around to reading it, and I really like it so far. About two characters who have lost their significant other, and they're both going through like this grieving process. She basically just moved into this town right next door to this guy, and they realize they both recently lost someone, and he's super closed off. Everyone in the town is like, he's so weird, like don't talk to him, like he's scary and sketchy. This book is like Archer's Voice mixed with Ugly Love. That's the vibe it's giving me. But he's not like soft and sweet. No, he's mean, like very mean to her. But then you can tell they're attracted to each other, and they'll like randomly like give into this attraction, and he'll like show his vulnerable side, and then he'll go back to being a dickhead. Yeah, everyone in the town is like, don't associate with him, like he's a weirdo. But she's like, no, I see him, he sees me, we both went through the same thing, he's just grieving, this is like whatever. And I'm like halfway through, and I really like it so far, even though it's like not very realistic to me. That's the book I'm currently reading, and I do plan on reading the rest of the series over time. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed seeing everything I've read over the past 3 months. It hasn't been that much, but I'm not beating myself up over it. With all that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you want to follow me on my other social medias, they're all linked down below as always, and I'll see you in my next video very, very soon. Bye!